The spotlights are on, the makeup is done, so a warm welcome to Wolf's Weekly, the new edition. My guest today is Dr. Robert Joslin, President of AIPMO, and we will be talking about project management. Robert, a good day to you.
Yes, good morning, Bert. Thank you for inviting me on to your talk show.
You're welcome. Let's talk about project management. And what is your view on this topic post-COVID-19?
Well, Bert, this is really a hot topic about the impact of COVID-19 on project management now and also in the future as well. I think what is true to say is that the norms that we had before will be very different to once the virus has actually passed us, and hopefully it passes us soon. It's partly due to the fact that we can never be sure that COVID-19 will actually disappear, but also as well as that there's opportunities that people have seen now by actually working at home that opens the eyes to decision makers of should we actually continue to run project management in the current setup, or should actually there be new operating norms that come out of it. So this creates opportunities. This creates opportunities for us.
Okay, you're talking about opportunities. I know that you do a lot of research in the field. You also have an extensive network of specialists and experts. So what will be the topics which will be the hot items for the coming months and years in your field?
It's a good question because I've actually been talking to researchers, experts around the world in different countries, and I was asked to actually contribute towards a magazine in PM World about COVID and project management and how will project management look post-COVID. When I looked at the findings, and I'm actually going to include the reference within this within the talk, is that there's views that have been expressed which I think if you look at them individually, they've been expressed in the past, how things and trends will actually change. So what I've done is actually taken the report and summarized the key findings. So if we actually now move on to the slide, which will actually come up on the screen, what I've done is to synthesize the 10 experts from around the world and actually what are the key topics they actually raised in that. So if you look at the chart, you'll see that project management, and it actually says ... So this is the importance of project management. All of them actually implied or actually stated the need for good project or better project management. And why is that? If you're looking at the world we have today and you look at the change, the new norm that we're going to go in the future, change means projects and then implementing those projects. So that's why people explicitly or implicitly stated that within their responses within this article. The top one's an interesting one. A number of people, so this is probably 4 out of 10 people, say that AI tools, artificial intelligence, will play a major role. The thing is, for AI to be, artificial intelligence to be effective, it needs large quantities of reliable data. And unless these organizations actually have the data available, then it's unlikely that AI will play a major role until such a time that the data is actually available. Another big one you see will be opportunities and challenges down here. So opportunities, points like new ways of working, looking at different types of tools that have that enable us to understand more. Challenges, that soft factors, working virtually, how we actually going to understand if we never meet these people, how we actually going to understand if they're any good. You see trust is there. When you work in a physical environment, you see people actually, power is proximity or proximity is power. So therefore, when you're working virtually, you don't actually get close to them. So they're actually more linked to their environment they're in versus actually the physical office environment. There's a number of other points down here as well that you can see from this.
So there are the opportunities on one side, right? But you also mentioned that there are some challenges. What are the challenges we have to look for?
Well, the challenges of being away from people, and you may never meet them at all. So, for example, like yourself, if I imagine that before we met on a daily basis on a project, and then I just talk to you, I never meet you, I never meet other people. And these are the challenges: is how do you actually sort of sense where something is going well? How do you actually describe something when you're doing brainstorming? Sense what people's feelings are like. It's a very different. It's a very different thing working in a virtual environment post-COVID than working in a physical environment. So these are some of the challenges that people will have post-COVID in trying to adapt to this virtual world, or maybe even a hybrid world.
So will that be the new norm of working? Or I talked to an executive the other day, and he said, "Well, I think we're going a bit too much to the extreme of home office and hybrid. At the end of the day, we're coming back, because remember, despite all this technology, we still cannot send a handshake via Zoom or via Skype or Teams or whatever the technology is called."
Yeah, so if it's a very good question. If you look at the next slide that should be coming up on your screen, this is actually what I put into the article, and I was thinking about this as when I was drawing it out. It actually shows the start point, so pre-COVID. So people, majority of them will actually work in the office. Maybe that's just because of the way that that's expected or they're used to. There's others that actually can work virtually. So I'm used to working virtually, as well as a lot of consultants. They travel around with the client sites, they work from home. Then COVID struck. Then everybody had to work in a virtual environment. And I remember in Switzerland, there was, and I know that our technical person who's actually recording this was spent pretty much 24 hours a day getting companies working into a virtual environment. But it went smoothly. So within 2 to 3 weeks, people were set up, they were dialing in and working. During this time, I know that we all know that some companies have failed, or there's short-term working because of incomes. Others will actually adapt and adjust to that. So then we come to the green line, post-COVID. So the thing is, we don't know exactly when post-COVID is. It may be at the point when the vaccine comes. It may be a point where people see that the risk is low, so there's still going to be people that are infected, just like people having flu or other sort of ailments. So then it's really a question of, do you return to work? Do you work in a hybrid approach because people are used to it, or do we stay in a virtual approach? So this is really the question post COVID-19, and it's a question that I think everybody needs to ask, not only the employees but also the management. What actually makes sense?
So before, if we go back to the old management books, we were teaching the white collar workers, the blue collar workers. It seems like now we have a new category: essential versus non-essential workers, workers working in the office, workers working at home, or eventually outsourcing workers again. Which is the direction project management will steer us?
Okay, so one thing to know is that outsourcing has been around for over 20 years. I remember my time at a management consulting company that we looked at outsourcing and trying to find models that actually worked. So that was back on the turn of 1999, 2000. So we've been working through various levels of outsourcing. One of the mistakes that companies make is outsourcing the project manager, because the project manager needs to be very tightly networked with executive management, with the operations. And so that's really an intern role. So there's just to be aware of that. So when we're looking at post-COVID, so everybody has been working from home, the question is who actually goes back into the office? If you're looking at positions that are highly political, that require a lot of communications and maybe a sense of importance, it's quite likely that the executive management will feel the need or will want to be back in the office. That wouldn't surprise me at all. So they will be the most likely candidates. Within the project world, project people anyway today are dispersed. So whether you have a project team that's physically in one location or actually spread across 3 locations, that has a virtual element to it. So they may be employed by the company, but they're all around in different countries. And that's why the previous slide, talking about cross-border projects will increase. I think it will not only just cross-border, but within the country itself. So project management, I think, depending on the role, so the project manager may be more in the office, whereas the project team perhaps will be more likely to stay virtual. So it's important to understand what they're doing, how they're doing, who they're communicating with, and that will then determine whether they're more in the office or they're more on the virtual side. So working from home. The question is then, what is the long-term tendency? I think as people learn to understand how to work in a virtual environment, their home office improves, telecommunication improves. The tools that they use, such as sketching, brainstorming, there's various tools that I'm learning myself. I think we all are within the education environment. They learn as well. Probably the long-term tendency will stay virtual, which then will give people the choice, as well as companies the choice of whether they recruit within the city, within the region, or within across countries. So I think that will be the long-term tendency.
So it looks like leadership of virtual project teams is really the key area for the coming months. And learning by doing, the practical approach.
And that's why we'll be looking at putting courses on that look at how do you manage virtual teams. When you're looking at a culture of a team, it's with the leadership on how they portray it. How do you do that when you may never meet your team? So how do you actually create a leadership culture, or how do you create a culture within virtual teams when you may never meet half the team? These are some of the sort of things that we're looking at and some of the challenges for the future.
You learn every day something new. Today, my guest was Dr. Robert Joslin with his perspectives, opportunities, and challenge on post-COVID-19 for project management. Robert, thank you so much for your inputs and enjoy the rest of this day.
Thank you very much as well. And I wish all your attendees or your audience a good day as well. Thank you very much.
Also, a big thank to the audience. And don't forget, there is somewhere a button on the screen where you can put like it. Please press the button if you want to come back. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.